our COBT viewers and listeners, it's Maynard and Mike. The week of Labor Day was something that we think is absolutely spectacular, unique, and speaks to an important event that's happening this week. Mike is at Barclays, which is always the kickoff to the energy season in the fall here in the United States. But in London, the World Nuclear Association is having its 50th annual symposium. And in today's environment where we're all thinking about nuclear, about power, about AI and the future, it's going to be one of the most interesting nuclear gatherings to happen in many, many years. To talk about nuclear today, to talk about some of the recent successes in nuclear and the outlook in today's world, we've got two of the best guests I could possibly imagine. First of all, His Excellency Mohamed Al-Hammadi is here. He's the CEO of Emirates Nuclear Energy Company. If you don't know, ENEC has had a fantastic experience with nuclear. It's probably the most successful nuclear experience of the last decade or so. And he'll talk about what the UAE has done in that area and how it sees the future of nuclear. He's also the chairman of the World Nuclear Association, so we're absolutely delighted to have him. We also got super lucky today and have the Director General of the World Nuclear Association, Sama Bilbao y León. She's been on the show with us before. She's become a great friend over the last few years. She'll be talking a lot about the conference, how they designed it, her members, what everyone sees as the issues today to really boosting nuclear and building it out. Let me just stop here by saying, Mohamed and Sama, we're so delighted to have you. We can't wait to talk about what's on your mind and what's happening with the conference this week.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Maynard.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, Mike Bradley, I mentioned you're going to be at Barclays this week. It's always a great kickoff. There's a huge diversity of energy topics, names, companies, executives, etc., talking there this week. But I don't want to steal your thunder. What would you tell us before we jump in with Sama and Mohamed?
Well, definitely that's going to be a tough act to follow what you just said. I mean, we've got some fantastic guests on, but I'm going to try to keep it really sweet and simple today. You know, as you know, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple events, right? 2 Fridays ago, it was all about the Jackson Hole speech and what the Fed was going to do and whether we're leaning. And you had a Fed that got a little bit more dovish. And so rates went down, stock markets went up to all-time highs. And then last week, we had basically anticipation of what NVIDIA's numbers would reveal, what the outlook would look like. And I'd say, you know, just to kind of sum up with NVIDIA said, you know, business is great. They beat like they always do. Their quarterly guidance was up, but it wasn't as optimistic as most people expected. And so the stock went down a little bit. But you know what? That's what happens when expectations are really high. And the thing I'd like to probably, get in here before we talk to our guests is just some figures that NVIDIA threw out there on their call. As you know, most people have been talking about 250 to 300 billion in spend for AI. For NVIDIA CapEx globally. They kind of pushed those numbers up to around $500 billion next year. And the thing I think that really held in NVIDIA's stock and a lot of these technology and AI stocks is, NVIDIA is talking about $3 to $4 trillion in spend by 2030. So that is a big number. If that is indeed the case, then, we've got a long way to go with a lot of these AI stocks. And so, for His Excellency today, I really want to kind of talk about that, what he's seen from a data. I know at his Sarah conference a few months back, he was talking a little bit about the spend on the AI and how excited they were. So I just want to get his thoughts of where he thinks we are now, what opportunity sets that is going to lead to their company, to the UAE, and then we'll go from there. So that's a really short wrap, Maynard, so we'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. And Mike, just those numbers you're talking about, NVIDIA is estimating the spend by all their customers on AI.
Correct.
So it's definitely.
But, going from 300 billion to 3 trillion, think about 3 to 4 trillion. That's bigger than the GDP of a lot of countries. So this is really big stuff. And so I think when you look at NVIDIA's growth is slowing, it's still growing 50 to 60%, but it's slowing, it's decelerating, but it's still big. And so I think the stock market is trying to work their way through valuation, stuff like that, but it's still up and to the right, and it's still really, really good.
Well,
and you know what? There's some really big implications for not only nuclear, but gas, power, electricity growth. Do we have that capacity? Do we have that infrastructures to really grow that out? So really looking forward to our guests today to talk about these subjects.
I was thinking coming into this conversation, Mohamed and Sama, is just how much the energy world has changed. I mean, that's why we love it. But when ENEC started thinking about nuclear, it was 2006. When you really pushed ahead, 2008 roughly was the time frame, and then you started building in 2012, and then in 2024, you had brought online 4 units. So, but in that period, so much change took place. And in particular, in the last few years, we've gone from being the energy transition as the topic everybody wanted to talk about to now seemingly AI is the topic that everybody wants to talk about, both of which were huge factors, are huge factors in the energy discussion. But Mohamed, let me just say, first of all, what you guys have done as energy people, when we look at what you've accomplished in the UAE, it's incredible. You had great foresight. You've now really transformed not just your power sector, but your economy. You did it plus or minus on time and on budget, which is what everyone always asks about in nuclear. So let me get out of the way, but up front, I wanted to say congrats. We're thrilled to talk with you about this journey, which you've really been leading since it got going. So welcome, thank you, and congrats.
Thank you, Maynard. And, very pleased and honored to be with you. And be able to pick up the ball where also Mike spoke about NVIDIA. I was there a few months ago, with their San Jose facilities. I did spend time with them to understand the advancement of technologies. And it's an impressive company, and they have a huge potential with the demand of AI. Let me zoom out and talk about energy at and higher level. Today, the demand of electrification is growing massively, and if you zoom out globally, there's around 700 million people who don't have electricity access. And that's something we have to provide to the world, and that's something as WNA. We are working very diligently to see how we can help and promoting nuclear technologies to be one of the key sources of energy to power the world. So if you look back to 2 years ago, we had the COP28 in Dubai, and we had a great success where great nations came in, and with the UAE, they've signed up for the tripling of nuclear. We have over 31 nations have signed up to the tripling of nuclear pledge. The year after that, we had also 14 bankers have signed to consider nuclear to be part of the green solutions. And fast forward, there's also great acceptance, publicly speaking, political and policy level. So the world is lined up toward the success of nuclear technologies. If I can zoom into UAE specifically, we had a great vision in 2008. And that followed up by a very detailed and diligent process to implement this to the highest standards when it comes to nuclear safety, security, talent development. We spent we focused and we delivered over the years. Today, Barakah provides 25% of the electricity for the UAE. To put that in perspective, that's around 40 terawatt hours annually, and that's equivalent to the size of the demand of London City, as we are in right now, and also equivalent to even the size of Switzerland from an energy demand. So we're very happy we managed to do that to high standards. As you mentioned, we delivered it on 7.9 years, which is a record time to a new development. And that's something also we've done it on budget. We are very proud to have the right partners and also the international collaboration and the support we've got to do this to the highest standard. So now, if I zoom in, also look at the AI demand today, this is something we take very seriously, and we are following up on the hyperscalers and their demand. We've seen tremendous demand. If I zoom in and look at specifically in the US market today, there is a huge tidal wave of electricity demand in the US. If you look at the hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, all of them are looking for electrons. And if I put this in perspective for the audience, this is for the hyperscalers, specifically for the AI also companies. They are on a sprint. Everybody put their hands on more electrons. They can improve their LMs and they can improve their AI tools that they give them an edge and give them market dominance. So that's why today we are very interested to help and cooperate with those companies to be able to provide them with a base load of abundance of electricity through the nuclear technology.
You know, I was thinking, again, kind of reviewing the success that you've had with nuclear. So many countries and companies are thinking about, how do I get power? How do I get reliable power? How do I make power? How do I make sure I have low impact or minimal impact power? Your phone must ring off the hook, Mohamed, with people asking, could you give me some advice? How did you guys do it? You know, what should I do now? Like, how do you balance all those requests? I guess is what I would ask.
Today, we're really thankful to the collaboration we had with many companies globally who helped us in developing nuclear power plants in the UAE. I think time is for us for also to pay them back and also engage with the international market. Our success in the UAE been very great, and we've received a lot of positive areas where we can cooperate in. The demand for electrons in the US today, from AI, also reindustrialization of the US, bringing industry back to the US, generated a huge demand for electrons. And that's why I'm spending a lot of time in the US to understand the market and also engage with the right companies and the right partners. What really impressed me is the hyperscalers, frankly. They are coming with a fresh thinking, and how do they, from a business model point of view, to be able to meet the demand and kind of accelerate the delivery of those nuclear power plants. And that's something for me is a fresh ideas where we, as UAE, we started from a white piece of paper. We did a program unconventionally than the traditional way of doing business. And today we've seen that fresh thinking from those hyperscalers are very interested to do business with us. If I may, the knowledge that we developed over the years in the UAE, and specifically the institutional knowledge and the talent development we've had, the legal contracts, the business models, the construction contracts, the how to manage such complex mega project and deliver it on time and budget. That knowledge we have today, and we can bring it to our partners everywhere in the world. And we have, as I mentioned, a very keen interest in the US market specifically.
I was thinking also, and Sama, I'd love to pull you in here, because the UAE example must be fantastic marketing for you as you talk globally about to other countries about doing nuclear. But I was just wondering, as part of that commercial, Mohamed, would you mind touching on, because at some level people see these as choices of power supply, but it's a much bigger choice than that, because it has to do with the country's national security, its economic development, other industries, the development of your own people. Like, there's just so much else that went into this decision. And I just wonder if you would hit on those aspects of the UAE and how it's helped the country do a lot more things than just have a lot of power.
So if I go back on 2008, as you mentioned, Maynard, the focus was how do we diversify our energy mix than being dependent only on fossil fuel, and also decarbonize our electricity in the future too. So that's why today the government have invested in renewable energy, in nuclear, and that's something now it's paying dividends for us. UAE today, by the way, has the least per capita of carbon footprint per consumption per capita of electricity. In the last 5 years, today we are number one in the level of decarbonization that the UAE did. Today we do celebrate the UAE has our sister company ADNOC. They have the cleanest barrel of oil being produced through the use of nuclear from nuclear energy through the clean electrons that they get from us. That's something happened with a lot of vision from the nation, and also a very diligent process we've taken in developing our, as you mentioned, and develop our human capital, in developing our supply chain, and also creating resilience in our nuclear program today. If I give you an example today, we have the highest ratio of very young people in the operation of the power plant. We have, by the way, and I say this with pride, we have the highest women working in nuclear power plants for us in the UAE compared to anywhere in the world. And it gives me pride personally because I have 4 daughters, and I hope they will find career also in this industry. And this industry will be in the UAE for over the next 60 years. That will run those power plants to the highest standards and make them available to create clean baseload and abundance of energy for the nation.
Sama, let me circle back to what I was saying. When countries talk to you about how do we do nuclear, how could we accomplish it, there's a lot of hurdles, particularly if the country hasn't previously done it. How important has the UAE example been to the World Nuclear Association's mission and your ability to tell people it can be done?
Yeah, you're right. Clearly, there is a lot of myths when it comes to nuclear energy. I mean, a lot of people will remember the projects that were not so successful. So it is very important to point out to the incredibly successful projects that we do have. So yeah, right. It is always very enlightening and very inspiring for many newcomer countries, not only for newcomer countries, but newcomer countries in particular, to actually show them, okay, it is nuclear energy can be a very fast and cost-effective way to decarbonize. And obviously, the UAE example tells us how in 15 years we can go from 0 to 25% of a country's electricity to come from carbon-free nuclear energy. So clearly, so that is helping many countries all over the world to perhaps throw away these preconceived notions that they had that nuclear takes a long time and that is not going to be able to meet their needs at the speed that they require, because clearly that is not the case. So this is why we are seeing enormous traction for nuclear, looking at the UAE example in many parts of the world, and maybe we can talk about that more slowly. So, the ASEAN countries, Singapore, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, all those countries are very, very, very proactively and consciously looking at what are the options, how to look at nuclear. Obviously, in Central Asia, we already have Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan already starting to build, but many other countries, Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, etc., also looking, again, seeing how this is feasible. And if you look at places in Africa, for example, Africa is also seeing, okay, we've been told many, many times how we are new, is going to take forever. Well, UAE, they did it. We should be able to do it as much as they did. So yeah, we are quite happy to always point out to the success story of the UAE and ENEC. And certainly this is part of what we do at World Nuclear Association, right? To bring together the industry and to share best practices and lessons learned and to collaborate and bring our best efforts together.
Sama, while we're with you, maybe go ahead and just give us a sense of the conference. I alluded to it up front. It's the 50th annual. Mm-hmm. It's in London. It is truly global. If you look at the speakers, they're coming from all over the world, from all different walks of life. But maybe give us just the attendees. It also has a big financial component. It's not sort of just a nuclear policy thing. But let me ask you to just talk about the conference for a minute.
Yeah, no, we are incredibly excited. This is our 50th World Nuclear Symposium. So as you may imagine, we've thrown the house out the window to make this the biggest ever World Nuclear Symposium. So as you know, the symposium is every year in early September in London. But this year is special because in addition to, celebrating 50 years and giving ourselves a little bit of a kudos for the fabulous accomplishments of the last 5 decades. What we really, really, really want to do at this World Nuclear Symposium is to look forward, to look to the next 50 years. So for that reason, we've been doing this in the past, but I think that this particular symposium is going to be quite unique in the sense that we are truly bringing all the stakeholders that are going to make nuclear energy a success. So you said that we will have a strategic summit on finance. So this is an entire day where we are going to go into very actionable, very hands-on work on what is it that we need to make sure that nuclear projects are bankable, and how to move from where we are to the actual financial investment decision in many of these projects. We also have another strategic summit on energy users, for what we were talking with Mike and you, because for the first time in, I would say, a long, long time, the energy users are playing a hugely important roles to accelerate and incentivize investments in the entire energy system. So obviously, yes, the AI companies, the technology companies are one piece of that puzzle, but not the only one. I mean, as you will see at our Energy User Summit, it's all sectors of the economies, the oil and gas industries, the metallurgical industries, the chemical industry, ceramics, shipping, you name it. Everybody's looking at opportunities to look at well, abundant, affordable, 24/7 energy, not just electricity. And then the symposium, of course, is, as you know, very, very high-level speakers from all over the world. We are having this year almost 1,100 delegates at the last count. So we still have a couple of days to see where we get. From 57 countries. And this is the only place where you are going to be able to see our colleagues from North America, from Europe, Western and Eastern Europe, from Asia, whether it is Japan, Korea, India, China. And we also will see the newcomer countries, Africa, in the Central Asia and the ASEAN countries. So this is the one place ever where you can actually have all these conversations of very experienced nuclear countries and newcomer countries, and how to bring that experience together. So we are very excited, but as I said, yes, and you will be here later in the week, Maynard. So I think that perhaps you might be able to report back in a future COTV to see what you heard, what you learned, what you saw. But what I think is important for us, at least, is that this is an action-oriented symposium. I mean, everything that the association does, they are not just events. These are convenient platforms for all the relevant stakeholders to work together. So our goal here at the symposium is for everybody to roll up our sleeves, because we are all going to go home with homework, because the moment is now for nuclear energy to really deliver on the full potential, and the nuclear industry needs to do it. And that's what we are trying to do, to put in place all the pieces to make that happen.
I was thinking, as you were describing it, we've all gone to conferences all our lives, and many of them you spend in the hallway, catching up with an old friend. This seems like the kind of conference where you need to sit in your seat and watch every panel discussion, because this is an education and it's a working conference. So I'm excited to do that.
Exactly. No, this is how we have put it together. The idea is, as I said, not just listen, hopefully contribute, and hopefully, yes, come together with everybody else, have a conversation, and figure out together how we can actually move the ball forward.
Maybe, Mohamed, I could ask you, because I mentioned you're the chairman of the World Nuclear Association. You're also on the board of TerraPower, and you, as we mentioned, you get all this interaction with so many people thinking about nuclear power. When you just think about the globe and the various inputs you have, what are some of the things that really strike you about this nuclear environment? I mean, one that comes up here a lot in the US is just getting it done and leaning into it. And there's been a big push, but can we start building again? And then there's the debate over the big ones versus SMRs, all these types of things. There's lots of technologies, but Your perspective from your role at the World Nuclear Association and just with all these phone calls you get, be curious about any other observations you have about the landscape today.
Man, that's a great question. And speaking on wearing the hat of the chairmanship of the WNA, I have to thank also Sama for her contribution here and her team. This event is organized in a way where we invite everybody to come in and give their ideas and everybody to come and learn and also be educated. Historically speaking, nuclear folks like also talk to each other, and that's something we broke the cycle. We invited the lawyers, bankers, investors, the hyperscalers to come and also listen to the successes in the industry, also the challenges in the industry and how they can contribute to solve some of those challenges. And frankly, what I've seen from the innovative ideas from the hyperscalers, very, very innovative. And also they brought a lot of great ideas of how we can improve and how do we accelerate all the recipes of success. We spoke earlier about the UAE success. The recipe of success, you need very talented people, very, very talented people who can solve challenges and problems. You need also the supply chain with companies and also skilled labor, welding, and the rest of it. You need government support. You need legal support. You need financial support. The beauty of this conference and this time we are in September of 2025, we have government support. Policy is clear, and all the majority of the nations who are serious about this, they are fully committed. And the policy is there, and the US is a great example. You have the financial support today. We have bankers who are interested, and also the World Bank, by the way, today supports nuclear financing. So you have all parameters, all indicators of success. The challenge is on us today, and how can we accelerate the process to be able to meet the demand of hyperscalers, of the industry that Sam mentioned. They are serious and they want the electrons and they want it now. To your question, which technology is the best, or which technologies that companies need to go to? My recommendation is we need to make the opportunity of success for everybody. Today we have SMRs, we have the AP1000 in the US. I think all of them are great technologies, and they need the right recipe of success. They need talented people. They need support from manufacturers. They need support from also bankers and lawyers and across the board to be able to be successful. The only lessons learned that I can share from the UAE that really worked very well for us is to be able to replicate from unit 1 to 3 to 4. And I can tell you from the data we've seen in Barakah in the UAE, the unit 3 and 4 compared to unit 1 and 2, we had 40% of efficiency when it comes to number of labor, rework, and improvement of across the board. And that's something I could share to the industry. I highly recommend when we don't build one off as a project, we build multiple units of those projects. Similar as the AP1000 today, the government in the US decided to build 10 of them. I highly recommend to be as close and as organized in a way where we can build momentum and also be able to replicate the success. And those projects need a huge and massive resources to be able to execute them. And what we've done in the UAE, and our recipe of success in the UAE, we are very interested to bring it to the US market. And also, we'll be discussing it at the WNA event here in London. And I hope we can engage with the right partners and be able to create a momentum globally to be able to benefit from this clean, abundant source of energy, which is the nuclear technology.
This was something, thinking about the conference, that is kind of striking, is that nuclear in some ways has this pattern that everyone sort of expected, which is the quote, developed countries or the countries with more resources will lead the effort, and then the technologies will go to the countries that are still in development mode. On the other hand, and it shows up in your conference, a lot of things might happen out in the world broadly that then help the developed world, help the wealthier countries figure out how to do things. Because in Europe and the US and Australia and Canada, we've lost a little bit our ability to get some things done. So Mohamed, how do you see those? It's a fascinating partnership. Like the rest of the world can show us how to do it, and but some of those other countries can lead when it comes to technologies and spending and things like that. It's a very interesting dynamic.
So specifically on those projects, they are big in scale. They're large projects. Mega projects require a lot of intergovernmental, inter-companies, inter-agencies kind of a cooperation. But if I talk about Barakah today, we had companies, suppliers from all over the world, by the way. We had from Japan, Germany, Sweden, US, and Korea, many other nations who contributed to Barakah. So that's why those projects are cross boundaries and across borders. Requires that level of collaboration. That's where WNA comes in the equation, where we can provide that beacon of showing what success looks like. At the same time, also create the connections between companies and suppliers, and even governments and banks and technology providers, to be able to sit together and be able to plan together those projects. And what's very, very important, and you mentioned TerraPower. TerraPower has a great technology. They've already picked a site. They are already started the excavation at that site. And that's what you need to be able to build momentum in those projects. You decide, you move, and take action, doing this to high standards of nuclear safety, security, and be able to replicate and go on that model of replication and repetition to be able to hone that institutional knowledge in the organization. That takes time, takes efforts, takes focus. And this is what we learned over the years in Barakah. And again, I always give this example. Building a nuclear power plant is like a marathon. It's multiple sprints in that marathon, but you have to go all the way and be able to learn and grow. And today in UAE, I'm very proud to say we have over 3,000 employees who are very, very capable and very talented, and looking for our next big adventure. And that's why we see the demand for electrons in the US, massive demand for electricity. And we see ourselves to be a key partner in the US market, in Europe, and other places.
Mohamed, that's a great lead into the question I was going to ask. And I kind of think about your 2008 vision, sort of a decarbonization nuclear strategy. We had a lot of hurdles to get over. You had Fukushima, right? I mean, so you had that during that time frame. A lot has happened, Ukraine war, stuff of that nature, but you were able to basically deliver those things on time and on budget, right? And I look at now, you talked earlier about, hey, we're looking at the US, hyperscalers are really interesting to us and how they're basically developing their strategies. And I think about 2008 to maybe where we are now, it was about decarbonization. And now it's about, hey, we need as much energy as we possibly can yesterday, right? And so I think about you guys, it was really more of a UAE strategy. We're going to decarbonize, but now you're thinking about life beyond UAE. What do we take to the rest of the world? And not only that, but how quickly do we develop that? What is the strategy for a market that's, especially in the US, that was only growing at maybe 0.5% demand growth, and now is growing 2, 3, 4% a year? How does your strategy from a UAE standpoint, just internally and as well as globally, how your strategy is going to change, just because the demand is growing exponentially from where it was not only 10 years ago, but maybe just 2 years ago?
Mike, on that point, if I give you an example on my journey in this project. So we had our project, which is give it as an example of a marathon. We had financial crisis, if you remember, in 2008, 2009. We had multiple things, and even COVID was also a big challenge to the world. And what is important in such projects with the current demand that you spoke about, it's required today and now for those hyperscalers and also the industries. What I would recommend is, what my key lessons learned is to have focus on the planning and being very strategic in your planning, and never ever underestimate the talent development. That's something has to be across the board, not just nuclear engineers. We need electricians, we need mechanical engineers, we need physicists, across the board. You need a lot of capabilities. Today, if you go and touch and look at where the rubber touches the road, or look at the US example today, how many universities are graduating those disciplines? It's fission, nuclear fission engineering. How many R&D projects today on those universities related to fission? That will give you a clear indicator of, are we focused and where do we need to focus? If you look at the universities, some of the US now today are focused on fusion. Fusion will come, and that's a great technology, and I look forward to that day. But we need to take it one step at a time. We need to prioritize and look at the talent development that is required today and tomorrow. And that's something in the UAE we've done very well. I'm very, very proud to say we have people who've been developed and trained in the US market. They were developed in Korea. They've trained here also in Europe. And some of them even finished their PhD. We have a student from Berkeley today who worked with us, a UAE national, who will finish his PhD. Very high caliber. And those individuals, this talent, you cannot buy. And you cannot develop over a few months. You need to really think it through and develop it in long-term planning. And this has always been a recipe of UAE. We do plan things ahead of time. We have a clear vision on where we want to go. And today also the AI is part of the UAE vision. And I'm very happy to say that today Barakah will contribute to that clean baseload for those data centers in the UAE to power the AI future vision of the UAE.
I was wondering, it's great you finished with AI, Mohamed, because as you think about AI generically, it's going to simplify, it's going to automate, it's going to bring speed to things that used to take a long, long time. As you think about the next 10 years or so, and Sama, for you too, how could AI, not just as a customer, but as a technology, do you think it could speed up nuclear design, construction, implementation? Are we going to, could it be also the thing that helps us go faster, make it happen more quickly, etc.?
Yeah, Maynard. So definitely, we think that the AI will have a key role to play to optimize many sectors of the economy, obviously nuclear already. So we are already seeing quite a lot of applications of AI in the nuclear industry, from things that are a little bit everyday work. I mean, so the correction action system and things like that, where we are using AI to accelerate and to make the labor of humans a little bit more cost effective, to, for example, optimizing the way we prepare a submittal for a regulator, to help the regulator to evaluate the submittal in a most effective manner. So that's, for example, something that is going to have a huge impact if we are looking at streamlining the way we license and regulate and approve all these, many nuclear reactors that we need to build if we are serious about tripling global nuclear capacity by 2050. So those are just some examples, but there are many, many things. I mean, from digital twins, from optimizing advanced manufacturing through AI, so there's a trillion ways in which we can make these projects more of a program, which is what Mohamed was explaining. Let's go from first of a kind or a never-ending series of first of a kind to a program where we actually achieve these economies of series, and we maximize the learning from one project to the other. So this is where AI is going to be a great asset.
Well, it's just fascinating. You don't, at least we don't bump into people saying, "Oh, what if we could build nuclear in half the time and half the cost?" But that's probably a topic not too far away, which will become a discussion. Well, Mohamed, I was thinking also, as you were speaking about the UAE experience, the thing that is very striking is the way the ENEC and the country got the balance right between government involvement and not too much and not too little. Like the the country you're planning, for instance, around people and supply chain and the long range, making sure that you spent your money wisely, but yet making it constructible in a way that private capital was much of the finance. So we just hear that in nuclear all the time, is what's the right level of government involvement? And you just seem to have found the right balance to make this all happen.
Maynard, that's a great point. The level of government support, you need the political clear policy from government. You need the right support when it comes to putting the right instruments to be able to have a civilian nuclear program in a nation. But what's very, very important is the talent and the resources. Just to give you an example, I was personally involved in the Barakah, and I remember the first pour of concrete and the second and the third and the fourth pour of concrete. Then we went from construction work to electromechanical work. Then we went to nuclear equipment installation. And I can tell you the rollover from the skilled labor and even engineers and supervisors, they were going from one unit to another unit to another unit. You could see them like from a rolling wave from one unit to another unit. That institutional development, that knowledge, that expertise takes time, and be able to realize the benefit that we had in Barakah of having the unit 3 and 4 being 40% more efficient than the first 1 and 2. That's very close to your example. That could be done. That's doable. That's achievable. But we need to start. And to be able to develop that skill and the institutional knowledge takes time. And talking about it doesn't progress forward. Doing it, taking action, and developing those resources and getting their hands dirty on those jobs. This is how you develop that knowledge. And this is something I can take from personal experience. Seeing those people moving from this job, from the unit to unit to unit, it's amazing. And that unit, by the way, the blue-collar worker, they normally stay in a job anywhere in the world from 2 to 3 years. And that's the rolling time from them to 1 unit. If you spread them too far, you will lose that efficiency, and that traditional knowledge, that knowledge experience will fade away. If you build them too tight, also it becomes you create a bottleneck and that scarcity of resources. So that's why this planning, coordination, collaboration across the board is very important for such mega projects. And also technology of nuclear technology is a sophisticated technology. It needs to be managed with the precision, the proper quality management. That's something require a lot of rigor and precision, and also quality control.
I was also wondering your background, Mohamed, electrical engineering, engineering management. As you built your career, you spent a lot of time on the project management side, and that does seem to be as important as the decision to do it, and as the technology is, the planning around the process and the project, that just leaps out as so important. Would you mind just hitting that point, because it's clearly such a big piece of this?
Yeah, the planning and the project management factor for such projects is very important. And I when I took my master's degree, and never thought I'm going to run a nuclear project, by the way. Mm-hmm. So it is, I've been lucky to be able to have the background and knowledge and expertise, and to be involved in this project. I'm very thankful to the 3,000 employees we have, and also the 25,000 people who got engaged in building Barakah. I'm very honored and blessed to be leading that team. Going to back to your question, you need to do a proper planning. You need to do a very thorough and detailed planning. Barakah, if you look at the schedule and critical path, it's hundreds of thousands of activities that we have to manage and coordinate over the years. And that level of rigor and discipline is required. And I remember when we were looking at the early days of the project, what are the 2 things that will make us successful? We picked on project management skills and also English language to be the only spoken language in our project. And that takes a lot of effort, by the way, just to develop people to be able to communicate and execute and get things done. It needs a lot of coordination, a lot of hard work, and also a lot of pre-planning. But once you start, executing, that benefit and that momentum keeps moving with you, and the momentum keeps building up along the way.
Yeah, so if I can say maybe, yeah, I was going to add, because I think that's something that Mohamed, if you don't mind, Maynard, something that Mohamed said is very important. I mean, I think that there is nothing inherent or intrinsic to nuclear power plant construction that makes it more or less difficult than any large energy infrastructure project. So what I think is the key here is that, in unfortunately some parts of the world, we have forgotten how we did it in previous decades, and we are still in the process of rebuilding those capabilities, those industrial infrastructures, those supply chains, those workforces. So as Mohamed said, in the places where we have invested and taking the time and having effective project management and the entire industrial infrastructure that is needed to deliver a large energy project, this is happening very effectively. I mean, obviously happening in the UAE, but we are seeing this in China happening very, very effectively. We are seeing this in Korea happening very effectively. We are seeing how many of the Rosatom projects are also going very, very cost effectively, on time and on budget. So once again, it's not nuclear or not nuclear, it's managing projects effectively and doing it over and over and over and over and over again.
What Sam mentioned is spot on. And if you look at the history in the US market, that was done before. It was done to very, very high standards, and one done and also in a very record time. And that's something I do have confidence that can be done again in the US. The US market you have the innovation, you have the broad base of talent across the states in the US. So for me, I have great confidence that this is doable and achievable. And by the way, mind you, at that time, at that era, when the US did this, we didn't have a lot of sophisticated computers. So that we have not just computers, we have AI. Right. So from a planning point of view, things could be done much more seamlessly, higher quality and more efficiency, more efficient way. So that's something, and that's why I have great confidence that we could do this, and the US market will have great success and become a market leader on this.
This is such an important point, because there's all this discussion of onshoring, and then sometimes it's a discussion of permitting. But to your point, Sama, there's a skill set here that is critical to making this work. And it doesn't matter if you're building a bridge or a nuclear plant, that skill set in some parts of the world has been lost. The US would be, one of them, just to get it done on time. I was wondering, Sama, one question for you, and then Mike, please jump back in, is, one place that we're always curious about is Europe, and how Europe is thinking about its energy policy. And for many years, you would say it was leading in decarbonization, but then the concern over the last few years has been it's leading in deindustrialization, like it is starting to lose something. What are the attitudes? How do you see the attitudes in Europe? And I know it's not one opinion, there's different places and different feelings, but how about Europe as a place for new nuclear?
Well, I think that you explained it really, really well. I think that for maybe a few years, Europe was, as you said, a leader in decarbonization at any cost. And I think that in the last couple of years, perhaps, many policymakers in Europe have realized that the cost was simply too high. So this is why we are seeing lots of interest in electrifying everything and meeting the demand of energy. But this has to be abundant, affordable, 24/7, of course, clean energy. And this is why we say in most countries in Europe right now, so countries that do have nuclear energy currently, the push for the most part, I mean, there is maybe one country, my native Spain, that is not following this direction, but everybody else in Europe, they are trying to maximize and make the most of their current fleet. So they are trying to operate these units for as long as feasible, and they are doing upgrades and they are doing all kinds of energy efficiency efforts to make the most of that. And then there is lots of countries in Europe that are looking at new nuclear projects. So from Norway, Finland, Sweden, the UK, Netherlands, France, of course, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Poland, of course. Okay, so, and I know I'm forgetting many. So all those countries have actual projects that are moving forward for nuclear. And then even countries that historically had not so positive policies on nuclear, such as Italy and Denmark, they really are looking at actually, they are reversing those policies in order to consider nuclear part of the big picture. So I think that Europe right now is a little bit, I won't say the ground zero, but a ground zero for lots of nuclear development with actual projects. You know that Czech Republic recently signed contracts and they are moving forward with new nuclear. And obviously you heard very many announcements a month ago or so in the UK for Saswell C and for Rolls-Royce, etc. So I think that we are going to see Europe starting to accelerate very quickly, because the importance of abundant 24/7 electricity for competitive advantage has been finally realized.
That really kind of hits on a point that I've been thinking about as well. Is that, I mean, I think everyone can agree nuclear is probably the best decarbonization tool we can use for electricity here. But I know, at least you guys, Mohamed, are you're involved in solar, you're involved in basic hydrogen, natural gas, all of the above strategy, which is fantastic. And maybe my question is that it felt like we really moved way far to the decarbonization at the expense of basically price and cost. If you think about it now, where we are in the cost curve, I mean, nuclear is not the cheapest, but it's probably the best longer term. When you think about next 5, 6, 7 years, especially as demand is growing so substantially just for electricity globally, how does price or cost really kind of play into what direction people are going to go from a strategy standpoint? Does that really play more into nuclear as costs probably continue to rise, or something else?
Yeah, if I may, on this subject, we need to think about it from national security point of view. First of all, nuclear power plants provide baseload, and that provides resiliency on grids and give you also inertia to the grid. And if I can share with UAE story today, UAE has a very diversified portfolios of energy. Barakah provides 25% electricity. We have another around 10% of renewable. And also we have gas plants that also kind of create the diversified portfolio of energies that's very, very much needed on any grid. And any grid, once you lose the inertia in the grid, becomes unstable, and that becomes a national security. It's not just industries anymore. This is supply of power to hospitals, to national assets, which is we cannot live without today with this time and age. So that's why nuclear provides abundance of electricity and also on base load. The disadvantage that nuclear has today that we don't get a credit for providing that resiliency in grid, and also the energy security that's provided by nuclear when it comes to grid stability. Those things will be rewarded for, I'm sure, in the near future. But with all of that said, today in the UAE, the nuclear power plants are providing clean base load and providing resiliency to our grid. And this is something could be a good role model for others to follow when it comes to energy mix. Any source of energy, if you overuse it has its pros and cons in the grid.
So, Mike, if you don't mind, I will add one more thing to what Mohamed just mentioned, because what we find often is when we are looking at the price, cost, and value of nuclear energy, and we talk quite a bit with the finance community, with you guys trying to frame the entire business case for nuclear. I think that we focus quite a bit on the investment cost, which is high. I mean, we do realize that these facilities are capital intensive. But I think it's very important for us to frame the entire value and price of the entire asset. So you are looking at an asset that, yes, it's going to have high capital costs. It's going to be built in 5.5 years normally. But then you are going to have 24/7 electricity for the next 60, 80, 100 years. So when you look at, I mean, and this is very stable electricity or energy if you are using the heat also. And with, as you know, the price of uranium has a very low impact on the price of electricity produced by a nuclear power plant. So what we have seen in many markets, I mean, Finland was a good example. Georgia was a very good example when Vogel went in both those markets with these nuclear units went into the market. And we are talking about units that were not built on time, not built on budget, so not a good case. Even in that bad case, the price of electricity in those markets actually went significantly down. So I think that it is important for us to when we look at nuclear, let's not just look at the cost of the investment. Let's look at the entire business case of the project.
If I may add one more point to what Sam said, is the nuclear power plants, they are capital intensive at the beginning. So if you do the life cycle cost, it goes even when it comes to cost, you have, as you mentioned, fuel, and also you have the labor cost and some minor maintenance costs over the years. So it goes against inflation once you invest in them. And that's why those has to be from a life cycle cost point of view. If you look at this from the first 5 or 10 years, and when you have a capital intensive assets like a nuclear power plant, that's the wrong way to assess it. But as we spoke earlier, today the demand of electrons is required now. Mm-hmm. And those companies, I talk about the hyperscalers and also the AI companies, they are in a sprint. They want the electrons and they want it now. And which technology is available today that you can kind of put your money on and deliver them on schedule and on budget. That's the challenge we have for the industry, and that's why we invite everybody to WNA to come here and have that debate, and hopefully we can find solutions to those challenges, and also connect the thoughts of where are the critical path for us all together that we need to move. I remember when I joined WNA, we were discussing what are the political support. Do we have the political support? Do we have the banks? Are they interested to finance nuclear? And I can tell you at that time was a good question that we didn't have much of interest. Today we have the political support and the government policies aligned. Today we have the banks also, and on the top of that also the World Bank supporting. Now the honor is on us. We have to act and we have to move fast to be able to deliver those assets on budget and time, and be able to bring this industry back and as a key solution to provide abundance of clean baseload electrons.
This has been absolutely fantastic. Mohamed, we've heard about the ENEC example for so many years, and it's great to get to meet you and hear about it. Sama, you've been such a good friend. You first came on COBT in the spring or summer of 23. And thanks to your efforts and so many others' efforts, this conversation has dramatically changed, and nuclear is really getting the look it deserves. So we can't wait to be at the conference this week. We so appreciate both of you spending time with us in this important week, and we're all in to support you as you keep pushing ahead and helping people understand the nuclear story better. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Maynard. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. See you this week. Thanks, everybody.